The smell of burning coffee filled the air, stinging my skin before my mind even caught up to what had just happened. In that single blistering moment, I realized the awful truth. My own father had just declared war on me. A mug of scalding liquid across my chest, $900,000 in forged debt on the table, and a man I once trusted standing there, daring me to challenge him. The father who had once promised to protect me was now ready to destroy me, but what he didn't know was that I wasn't going to break. I was about to become his worst nightmare. Before I tell you this wild story of betrayal, manipulation, and cold revenge, I want to thank every single one of you who helped us reach 1,000 subscribers. You guys are the reason these stories get told, because sometimes justice really does find a way. And today, you're about to hear how one woman, me, turned heartbreak into power. So if you've ever questioned what family loyalty really means, hit that like button. And let's dive in. My name's Linda. I used to believe family was everything. I believed fathers protected daughters, that love could outlast anything, and that blood was thicker than water. But I was wrong. Painfully wrong. It all began on a Tuesday that should have been completely ordinary. One of those quiet mornings when you hear the kettle whistle, smell the coffee, and think life might finally be okay for a moment. I was 29, still living in the home I'd grown up in, taking care of my dad, Richard, since Mom passed 3 years ago. I paid his bills, organized his accounts, and told myself I was doing the right thing, keeping our family together. That morning, he was sitting at the kitchen table with the newspaper folded neatly beside him, sipping from his favorite chipped blue mug. The blinds let in thin slivers of sunlight, painting gold stripes across the faded linoleum. Everything looked normal, peaceful, until he smiled. It wasn't the warm, familiar smile I'd grown up with. It was thin and sharp, the kind that sent an icy crawl down your spine. "Linda, honey," he said smoothly, sliding an envelope across the table like a gift. "I've got a surprise for you." My stomach twisted. Something deep in me already knew this was no surprise I wanted. When I opened it, papers spilled out. Neat stacks of debt documents, bank loans, casino slips, mortgage forms. Every single one carried my name, my signature, only they weren't mine. The numbers blurred, too many zeros to take in, until one figure stood out like a slap to the face. $900,000, almost $1 million, all of it in my name. "This must be paid by Monday," he said coldly, like he was discussing the weather. "Collectors are coming, Linda. They want their money." I could barely breathe. "No," I whispered. Something snapped in him. His face twisted in rage. Before I could even step back, he hurled his mug. The coffee hit me like liquid fire. My neck, my chest, my skin screaming. I stumbled, clawing at my soaked shirt, tears streaming as the pain seared deeper. "Get out!" he shouted, his voice cracking with fury. "Get out of my house if you won't help your own father." I stood there shaking, pressing a towel to my burns, staring at the man who had once taught me how to ride a bike. That man was gone. The one in front of me was a stranger. Cruel, desperate, willing to burn me alive to save himself. And right then I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. This was war. I ran out into the street, half blind with tears and pain. 15 minutes later, I ended up on the porch of my neighbor Daniel, a retired teacher who'd always looked out for me. When he saw my burns, his face went pale. "Jesus, Linda, what happened to you?" Between sobs, I told him everything. The forged debts, the lies, the attack. Daniel listened silently, jaw tightening with each word. "That's not your father anymore," he said finally. "That's a desperate man, and desperate men are dangerous." He was right, but it took weeks for me to understand how deep Richard's betrayal went. That night, lying in Daniel's guest room with ice pressed to my burns, memories started crashing down like waves. The forged signature on my savings account last year, I'd found $3,000 missing. But when I confronted him, he'd faked a coughing fit so bad I drove him to the hospital, sobbing with guilt. I never brought it up again. Then came the strange mail. New credit cards, loan offers, even bank statements for accounts I'd never opened. He always brushed it off with, "It's just identity theft, honey. Throw them away." The more I thought, the more I realized how isolated he'd made me. He'd cut me off from friends, discouraged dating, guilt-tripped me every time I mentioned moving out. "It's just you and me now," he'd say. "We have to stick together." And then there was the gambling. God, the gambling. The casino chips I found in his jacket. The betting slips. The statements from riverboat casinos hours away. Every time I confronted him, he'd laugh it off. "Just a little fun. I've got it under control." Lying there, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., I saw it all clearly for the first time. He'd been planning this for years, grooming me to be his financial scapegoat, his human shield. Every fake signature, every hidden debt, every lie, it was all leading to that envelope on the kitchen table. He'd turned me into his insurance policy, but what he didn't realize was that I was about to become his worst nightmare. The next morning, I called the police. Officers Martinez and Chen arrived within 20 minutes. They took photos of my burns, my torn shirt, the papers. Their faces darkened as I explained. When they went to arrest Richard, he tried to twist it all. Claimed I was unstable, that I had gambling problems, that I was framing him out of spite, but the evidence told another story. "These signatures are all forgeries," Officer Chen said, flipping through the papers. 37 documents, all copied from the same sample. Richard's face drained of color. "She signed them," he stammered. "My daughter just forgets things sometimes." "Forgot forging her own name 37 times?" Martinez asked dryly. "Mr. Miller, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and domestic battery." As they led him out in handcuffs, he turned to me, his eyes burning with hatred. "You'll regret this, Linda. Blood is thicker than water, but you've just poisoned your own family." I watched the police car drive away and, for the first time in years, felt something powerful return. Hope. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over, because the real revenge was just beginning. My lawyer, Rebecca Grant, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in financial fraud. The moment she saw the papers, her mouth curled into a knowing smile. "This," she said, spreading them across her desk, "is one of the clearest cases of identity theft I've ever seen. Your father didn't even try to hide it. Same pen, same dates, same handwriting. It's like he wanted to get caught." Over the next few weeks, she built a rock-solid case. Handwriting experts proved every signature was fake. Investigators traced the gambling debts back to Richard. Casino staff confirmed he'd spent nights drunk and furious, bragging about a brilliant plan to use his daughter as collateral. But the most damning evidence came from him. The records he'd kept. The transfers from fake accounts in my name. The email chains with loan sharks. The texts bragging about how clever he was. Rebecca laughed softly, shaking her head. "In 30 years of law practice," she said, "I've never seen someone work so hard to incriminate themselves." He'd turned me into his insurance policy. But what he didn't realize was that I was about to become his worst nightmare. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after his arrest. Richard had hired a bargain basement lawyer named Matthew Thompson, who seemed more interested in plea deals than actual defense. When I saw him in the courthouse hallway, he looked smaller somehow, diminished. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he was scared. Good. He should be scared. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the father who tried to frame his own daughter, and the local news had picked up the story. I could see reporters in the gallery, their cameras focused on Richard as he sat at the defendant's table. Sweating through his shirt, Judge Virginia Collins was a stern woman with silver hair and zero tolerance for nonsense. She'd read through the case files beforehand, and her expression made it clear that she was not impressed with Richard's version of events. "Mr. Miller," she said, "you stand accused of 37 counts of fraud, identity theft, domestic battery, and attempted extortion. How do you plead?" Richard's lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Richard pushed him away. "Not guilty, Your Honor. My daughter is lying to cover up her own gambling debts." I felt Rebecca tense beside me. Richard was going to trial, which meant I'd have to face him in court and relive everything. But it also meant that his crimes would be exposed in excruciating detail. Over the next 3 days, Rebecca systematically destroyed Richard's credibility. She called handwriting experts who testified that the signatures were obviously forged by someone with access to genuine samples. She presented bank records showing that money from the fraudulent accounts had been spent at casinos, not on anything that could remotely benefit me. She even called casino security officers who testified that Richard had been banned from 2 establishments for aggressive behavior toward staff. But the most devastating testimony came from his own gambling buddies. Joseph Martinez, a regular at the Riverboat Casino, took the stand on day 2. Under oath, he admitted that Richard had bragged about setting up his daughter to take the fall for his debts. He'd even laughed about how easy it was to copy her signature because she'd been signing documents for him for years. He said she was too stupid and loyal to ever figure it out. Joseph testified, said he had her wrapped around his finger. I watched Richard's face crumble as his own friend destroyed him. The jury looked disgusted. Even his lawyer seemed to be distancing himself. On day 3, I took the stand. Rebecca walked me through the timeline of abuse and manipulation, the gradual escalation from small financial favors to full-scale identity theft. When she asked me to show the jury my burn scars, still visible 3 months later, I unbuttoned the top of my blouse and revealed the angry pink marks across my chest. The jury gasped. One woman in the front row actually covered her mouth in horror. "Your father did this to you?" Rebecca asked. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "He burned me because I wouldn't pay debts that weren't mine. He was willing to destroy me physically and financially to save himself. When it was Matthew Thompson's turn to cross-examine me, he tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter who was exaggerating the abuse. But every question he asked just made Richard look worse. "Isn't it true that you lived rent-free in your father's house?" Hesked. "It's true that I lived there while caring for him after my mother's death," I replied. "I cooked his meals, managed his medications, and tried to help him with his gambling addiction. He repaid that care by trying to frame me for nearly $1 million in debt." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up and delivered the verdict that changed everything. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. Richard collapsed in his chair. The sound he made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Judge Collins sentenced him to 8 years in prison with restitution payments of $25,000 to me for damages and emotional distress. As they led him away in shackles, Richard turned to me one last time. "You destroyed your own family," he whispered. "I hope you're happy." I looked him straight in the eye and said the words I'd been practicing 4 months. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Today, 18 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Richard tried to burn me, drinking coffee from a new mug. The house is mine now, paid off with the money recovered from his fraudulent accounts. The burn scars have faded to thin silver lines that remind me not of pain, but of the moment I decided to fight back. Every month I receive a check from the state prison system, $25 deducted from Richard's commissary account, and sent to me as restitution. It's not much money, but it's the sweetest 25 I've ever earned. Each check is a reminder that justice was served, that the man who tried to destroy me is paying for his crimes every single day. He's tried to contact me through lawyers, through mutual friends, through other family members. He wants forgiveness. He wants me to visit him. He wants to make things right. But some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds cut too deep to heal. And some people forfeit their right to redemption the moment they choose cruelty over love. I've built a new life from the ashes of the old one. I have friends now, real friends who care about me, not what I can do for them. I'm dating a wonderful man named Daniel. Yes, the same Daniel who helped me that first night, who treats me with the respect and kindness I should have demanded all along. I'm taking college courses and planning a future that belongs entirely to me. Richard may have given me life, but he never gave me love. Not real love. Real love doesn't forge signatures. Real love doesn't throw scalding coffee. Real love doesn't try to destroy the people it claims to protect. Blood may be thicker than water, but it's not thicker than justice. And justice, when it finally comes, is the sweetest revenge of all. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the ones we need protection from. Linda's story reminds us that we don't owe loyalty to people who abuse that loyalty, even when they're family. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more Tales of Justice Served Ice Cold. And remember, you're stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and worthy of respect from everyone in your life. I'll see you in the next one.